Court Judge Mark Boonstra. Come on up.
Yeah, I didn't know I was the keynote speaker. I think that last guy should have been your keynote speaker. What do you think?
Yeah.
Pretty good, huh? Thank you, John, my good friend John, for the invitation to come here tonight. It's nice to be in the home of Hillsdale versus everybody, which I've heard so much about. And my good friend Darren over here. Good to see you, Darren. My name is Mark Boonstra. I'm a judge on the Michigan Court of Appeals currently. And we announced a couple weeks ago I'm running for the open seat on the Michigan Supreme Court. So a couple things I wanted to talk about tonight. One is that, and one is a book I wrote that John wanted me to come and talk about too, but maybe I'll just start and tell you a little bit about myself, and we'll probably hit both of those as we go. And I'll try not to take too long, but I grew up in Muskegon, attended the Muskegon Christian Schools and Western Michigan Christian High School. And from there, I graduated from there and went on to Michigan State University and University of Michigan for law school and graduate school. And then I worked initially in Detroit for the Miller Canfield Law Firm, which is one of the kind of premier firms based here in Michigan. And I was actually there, it's hard to believe, for 27 years. I'm older than I look. And I practiced in their litigation area and appellate law area. And among the things I did while I was working at the firm was I was involved in the GOP for many years. Initially in Oakland County, I was a precinct delegate, I was a delegate to all kinds of state conventions, that sort of thing. And ultimately was the chair of the Washtenaw GOP for 4 years, from 2008 to 2012. And it was an interesting time. That's when the Tea Party grew up. And among them, Rob Steele, our national committee man, came up in my county as part of the Tea Party. And it was an interesting place to be the GOP chair. That's Ann Arbor, right? That's the People's Republic of Ann Arbor. And it was such an interesting county because we had kind of what was considered the establishment GOP, and then there was the new Tea Party, and we had the Ron Paul people. The Campaign for Liberty was based there, right? So there was tensions and conflicts, as there were in lots of counties. The approach I tried to take was to say, and I was brand new. I came in the middle of a term. They asked me if I would do this, and I thought, oh, do I have time? But I agreed to do it. And then I remember it was tax day, April 15th. I think it was 2009. I had just become, or 2008, I can't remember, 2008. I had just become the chair, and they were having a rally on the Diag at the University of Michigan. And I'm just a member of the crowd watching, and these people are coming up, and they're the new Tea Party people, who I didn't know yet, right? And they're saying, here's what we're going to do. We're going to take over the county party. We're going to run for precinct delegate. We're going to get on the county executive committees, et cetera, et cetera. And I sort of said to myself, what have I gotten myself into? But my approach was to say, thank you, welcome, come on in. We've been waiting for you. We need you. We need to work together. And we ultimately did that. And those people I eventually got to know, and they were on my executive committee. And 4 years later, they re-elected the officers, and it really worked well. So I can't get involved in all the party stuff that's going on now, but I sure hope we find a way to come together to fight the common enemy, because there's a bigger common enemy out there. But that's as much as I'm going to say about party stuff, because I'm nonpartisan. I have to be nonpartisan, so I have to stay out of all that now. In 2012, I had the opportunity to join the Michigan Court of Appeals. And I've been there ever since. It's been 12 years on the court now. I had to give up my GOP chair position. I had to give up my precinct delegate position and all of that, and be a nonpartisan judge. And I've done that to the best of my ability for 12 years now. I consider myself a judicial conservative, a rule of law judge, someone who is going to and does interpret the statutes and the Constitution the way they're written. I always say judges should not come to the bench with an agenda, as some do. We should not be trying to make the law into what we want it to be. We should be interpreting the law and applying the law completely, fairly, and impartially to the facts of the cases before us, no matter how they're going to come out. I've probably written hundreds, if not thousands, of opinions in those 12 years. And I was just thinking as I was listening, there's a few examples I could give you that might interest you, and I'll be quick about that. But one, I had to write a number of opinions about government overreach. And I've talked about how sometimes it's the executive branch that overreaches, sometimes it's the judicial branch that overreaches. And some of those opinions have gotten me in a bit of trouble. And if you Google my name in the Court of Appeals, you'll see some attacks on me. And that's unfortunate, but I've always thought, you know, this is my job. If I'm not going to say what I think needs to be said under the law, then I'm not doing my job. So I've done it, and I've taken heat for it. But I'm not going to be intimidated by it. I'm just not. I'm too late in my career. I don't care. Let them come after me if they want. But one of them was about the current administration's, it had to do with their regulation of vaping. Now, I'm not for or against vaping. I don't have a dog in that fight, right? I'm just deciding the case, and the issue was, did the administration follow the proper rules and procedures to do what they were trying to do to regulate vaping? And this is when the pandemic had started and all the emergency orders were coming down, and I saw a parallel there, and I wrote an opinion that said, actually, some of these you can't write in the court's opinions. So this was a concurring opinion. That was just me, because we sit in panels of 3 judges otherwise. So this was just me. And I raised the question, has totalitarianism come to America? And they're already attacking me in this race for that opinion.
It's the right question.
Yes, it is the right question, isn't it? And I was careful to, I didn't have to answer that question in the opinion. That wasn't my job in that opinion, but I wanted to raise the question for people to think about, right? What was another opinion? I had a criminal case. And I think it was might have been a sex crime, I can't remember. It doesn't really matter. We had 3 judges on the panel. It was myself and 2 left-wing women colleagues of mine at the time. And we all agreed we were going to affirm the conviction and the sentence for this defendant. That wasn't a question. We could all reach agreement on that. The question was how we were going to say it. And it was complicated because this defendant, born a man, wanted us to refer to him, in our opinion, as they. The reason he gave is that he identified as female. There were actually 2 reasons, and I don't know what either of them has to do with gender, to be honest with you. He identified as an 8-year-old girl and a feline, a cat. And this case was not assigned to me to write, so I'm not writing the opinion, but I read the file and I said to myself, I am not going to sign this opinion if they conform to that. I'm just not. And of course, my colleague did. And I wrote a concurrence, because we were concurring in the ultimate relief, we were affirming. And, you know, it's always been my practice, because I think people have a right to know why cases are decided the way they are. And even if I'm writing separately, I generally think people have a right to know why I'm writing separately. What is it about the majority opinion I don't agree with? So I explain it. And so I did. And it was short. It's fun to read. For one thing, I quoted Abraham Lincoln, who said, "How many legs does a dog have if you call a tail a leg?" Answer, 4. Calling a tail a leg doesn't make it a leg. And I said that I was not going to join in the insanity that has apparently now reached the courts.
Wow.
Amen.
That resulted in a couple of letters to our Chief Justice of our Supreme Court and my Chief Judge on the Court of Appeals. One of them was signed by 19 organizations. They had various letters in their names, some of them, as you might imagine.
Yes.
LG. Although again, as I said, I don't know what any of that has to do with gender, right? They wrote a letter to our Chief Justice suggesting that some action be taken against me, and referred to cultural competency training, which I would redefine as re-education camps, right? So nothing came of that in terms of any action other than our Supreme Court, the current Supreme Court that I'm running for, has now adopted a new court rule, first in America, that binds all judges in Michigan, that says lawyers and parties to cases upon appeal can designate their personal pronouns, and we must use them. And if we don't, what's going to happen? They're going to say that we're violating the canons of judicial conduct and should be thrown off the bench. That's the kind of intimidation that we're facing, right? So anyway, sidetrack. I mentioned my book. I got to tell you a little bit about the book. I wrote it while I was on the Court of Appeals. In my spare time, when I could find it, I disappeared for about 8 years, literally, in my office, researching this. And I wrote it because I was concerned for a long time, as I know you are, about how far I thought we had strayed as a country from what our founding fathers intended us to be. And I came to the conclusion that there was a fundamental underlying reason for all of the ways in which that had happened, and that is that we had lost God, and that our modern day society is banishing God from every aspect of our society to the extent it can. So I wrote a book. This is a little flyer I have on it. There's some out there. I have some more if you're interested. The book is called In Their Own Words, Today's Godless America, What Would Our Founding Fathers Think? And what I did, and why it took me 8 years, is I researched every one of the signers of either the Declaration of Independence, the Articles of Confederation, or the United States Constitution, which turned out to be 118 men. I don't think I appreciated what I was taking on, because that was quite a monumental undertaking. And what I did is I researched each of them, focused on their religious lives and backgrounds, and then wrote a relatively short biography, a chapter for each signer. A biography that has all the usual things you might see in a short biography, what they did and what they were elected to and this and that, but also really focuses on where they came from and who they were from a religious perspective. And then after the biography, I follow it up with a series of quotations, what they said in their own words, hence the title of the book, about religion and its proper place in our society. And then in each chapter, I give one example from modern day America, something that's transpired in the last few years, a headline and my summary of the article that was written about this, and then I just pose the question. Again, I don't give the answers. I think it's self-evident. I pose the question for the reader: what would John Adams, what would Benjamin Franklin, what would William Paca, a lot of these people you never heard of, what would they think of this event, and what would they collectively think of what we are in America today? And as I say in an excerpt from the book that I wrote, the part that I wrote, our founding fathers must be rolling over in their graves. They gave us a nation of liberty under God, but it has been transformed. Keeping our freedoms now requires that we return to our founders' core principles and beliefs. Here's I was honored to be on a number of radio shows and podcasts, but one of them I was on a couple years ago was Dennis Prager. Anybody know who Dennis Prager is?
Yeah.
He's actually a Jewish guy, right? But we share the attack that's going on today on Judeo-Christian tradition, don't we, and Judeo-Christian values. He said, there is no important book. If you care about what this country was founded to be, you need to see these 3 volumes. I also have a foreword in the book from someone with a Hillsdale connection, and he's one of my biggest supporters, both for the book and for my race for the Supreme Court, because he's the one who really encouraged me to do this, is former Chief Justice of the Michigan Supreme Court, Stephen Markman, who also is Jewish. He taught constitutional law here at Hillsdale for 30 years. I talked to him on the way here, actually. And he wrote, in their own words, deserves to endure. It deals with matters that are transcendent and permanent and timeless. Your children and grandchildren and those whom our Constitution refers to as our posterity will, I believe, continue to value this work. And let me just read you one quote from one of the 118 founders, and there's lots of quotes from each of them. And I'll read it and then you see if you know who it is. The religion and public liberty of a people are intimately connected. Their interests are interwoven. They cannot subsist separately, and therefore they rise and fall together. For this reason, it is always observable that those who are combined to destroy the people's liberties practice every art to poison their morals. Do we see that today? Samuel Adams, the father of democracy, he was called. Or Sammy the Maltster, because his family was in the brewing business. They kind of ridiculed him a little bit with that one. Anyway, if anybody is interested in, at least in the book, or spreading the word about the book, there's brochures, or I actually have a few, or they're available online. Anyway, that's all I wanted. I didn't come here to pitch the book, but I wanted to tell you that. So, I'm really happy where I'm at on the Court of Appeals. I could coast the rest of my career there. I've been there 12 years. I know the job inside and out now. I really don't need to climb any more ladders. But a lot of people I respect a lot, and that includes Justice Markman. It includes Justice Clifford Taylor, Chief Justice also. It includes former Chief Justice Bob Young. It includes former Chief Justice Maura Corrigan, who are all supporting me to do this. They know me. They know what the job is. They know what the court needs. They have only one interest, and that is the interest of the court and the interest of our jurisprudence. And they've encouraged me to do this, and that's really why I'm doing this. How many of you know, most people don't know this and are kind of shocked to learn this. We have 7 justices on our Supreme Court. 5 never served as judges before they were on our Supreme Court. Not at the local district court level, not at the circuit court level, not at the Court of Appeals level. And I have to tell you, from where I sit on the Court of Appeals, and I have to follow their decisions when they issue them, and my cases, if they go further up on appeal, they go to them. It's like on-the-job training. And they are, let me say it nicely, mucking up our law in lots of ways. Darren, you probably see that. Some of it is ideological because they're controlled by the left now. But some of it is that they have no experience and they don't know what they're doing. And I have had to write some opinions that essentially say, in a more diplomatic way than this, you guys don't know what you're doing. This doesn't work in the real world. I just had a case yesterday. Was it yesterday? I was sitting in Grand Rapids, and this criminal case came back to us, People versus Abbotoy. Look it up. One of my best concurrences. It was up the second time because it had come up to us. Our court had to send it back because of something the Supreme Court said. It has to do with sentencing issues. And I wrote a concurrence that said exactly that. This case is Exhibit A, I said, for why this other opinion, Boykin, that the Supreme Court wrote, doesn't work in the real world, and I explained it. And so then I went back down to the trial court, and it came back up to us, and we heard it again yesterday. And I'm not sure what we're going to do with it. I'm not sure if we have an agreement on that, but anyway, criminal law especially, they're doing everything they can to make it more difficult to convict people and more difficult to hold them accountable with sentences that the legislature has provided for. Anyway, I'm running for the Supreme Court. There's a vacant seat this year because Justice Viviano has announced that he's not going to run again. He's one of the two who was ever a judge before. He was a Macomb trial judge, a circuit judge, which isn't exactly like having appellate law experience where you have a written record, but at least he had experience as a judge. If he leaves and we don't fill that seat with someone who knows what he's doing and has shown that he knows what he's doing by writing opinions that you can read and you see how the judge thinks, we're going to be left with one justice up there, Brian Zara, who's an old and dear friend of mine, by himself. He needs help, and we need to start building that court back up into a respectable court. And we need to start with that seat. If we're lucky, win the second seat that's up, where we would have to beat an incumbent, and then start persuading some of the other justices to vote more correctly, and maybe win one more seat, and we could maybe have a respectable court again. So anyway, I guess that's about all I wanted. You have a question? You've had your hand up 3 times, so go ahead.
Well, we got one from Hillsdale County here that's he's no longer a House rep. He's running for Supreme Court. He's never been a judge, and he's in bed with the parking lot mafia. He's never come here, jerk. His companies, his family's companies, I think, pay the money to sue us.
Yeah, I don't know anything about the parking lot issue. I know who you're talking about. You're talking about Representative Fink, I believe.
You got it.
So I know Andrew. His dad is actually a friend from Ann Arbor when I was there. I'm friendly with Andrew. I saw him the other night at an event. The story there is this, I don't mean to disparage Andrew at all. I do think he's a young man in a hurry. He announced about 6 or 8 months ago that he was running for the other seat on the Supreme Court against Justice Kyra Bolden. And the truth is, he called me beforehand to I think both to get my advice and to see if I was going to run for that, because candidly, I think he probably would have deferred to me. And I told him no, and I explained why. But I did explain to him then that I was looking at the other seat if Justice Viviano chose not to run. I then waited patiently for Justice Viviano to make up his mind, which he did about 2 weeks ago. We were poised to announce our campaign at that point, and we did. At the same time, Andrew announced that he was going to switch from running for the Bolden seat that he had been running for the last 6 or 8 months to the open seat that I'm running for. So at the moment it's kind of a mess because we have 2 of us now running for the open seat and nobody right now running for the Bolden seat. Yeah.
First off, there's no question about who I'm voting for, because I don't like people that wiffle waffle and switch, number one. Number two, he's had an opportunity to be here 4 years. He wanted to be here tonight, but he was afraid of an angry mob, which he should have been. But I want to bring up, you said you don't need to go any further in your career, but we need you to.
Yeah.
Thank you for saying that. I appreciate it, and that's what I'm hearing from the justices who are supporting me, that have confidence in me, and that's really why I'm doing it, because like I said, I probably have more fun staying where I'm at. It'd be an easier job, and I'm going to have to take some pot shots along the way now, and if I win, I'm going to have to haggle with people I disagree with. I'm probably going to have to write a lot of dissents because I'm going to be in the minority, but you know, it's a first step toward building the court back, I hope, for the good of the state.
Sir, you just said in what you just said a few minutes ago that there's 5 people in there who don't know what they're doing. You just said that, so we need you.
Thank you.
Is that all? Oh, yeah, Darren.
I've followed Judge Boonstra for a little bit now, and obviously, I mean, if what he said doesn't convince you to support him, then there's nothing really I can add to that, but I can just say, you know, I appreciate you taking a stand and willing to, because you stand for the right thing, you fight those arrows, as, you know, John Bertan and a lot of other people here know. And also, I do have his books, if anyone wants to check them out. I mean, you should buy them and support them, but I do have some in my office, if anyone ever wants to take a look.
I actually have a few in the car. I want to say too, I was driving across the state the other day. I had just announced a few days before that, and I got a call, and it was my good friend Darren, who I hadn't even called yet, but he called to support me, and I really appreciate that. It means a lot. Yeah.
Cool.
Thank you, Jim.
Yeah, you know, I wrote some notes down here. You know, he was saying like, what would our founding fathers? Being hanging out with Tan in the car for months of hours. I came up with a thing a while back, and it was, what would Madison do? You know, kind of like what would Jesus do? You know, it's funny to watch people in their profession like Darren and Mark talk legal, because they're like legal nerds. They're like giddy about it. You know, it's weird to me. I don't understand the language, or it's kind of like me with rap music. A lot of people don't understand it. You know. Also, your former justice from Hillsdale, you should probably call him and tell him to donate $1,000 to us. We need the help here. Young man in a hurry. It's true. Andrew is in a hurry. His wife told me a few years ago he wanted to be president of the United States of America. You know, being a young man, I mean, yeah, I get it. You know, you're excited to get in, you're conservative, whatever. His first term, he wanted to run for Speaker of the House. That's unusual. It's not like the rarest thing, but it's unusual. And then obviously now for Supreme Court without even having any judge experience. Fink did ask me about coming here to speak, guys. I told him why bother. I said, it's campaign year for us. We don't have time to play and try to mend bridges right now. We got to work. I said, you come here, it's going to be a shit show. You know, Jen caught us off guard tonight. And, you know, at the convention, I had to talk about this. We're always being the better person. I mean, if you guys want Fink to come speak, you know, let's bring him. But to be honest with you, I don't see the real purpose at this point. He's had 4 years to speak. He did call me the day that they announced and asked for support. I told him I would support him because I want him the hell out of here. Lindsay said he would support him because what he did was call key players through the state that have influence because their race depends on delegates. Mm-hmm. So he called key players that have influence across the state to get their endorsement. Well, he didn't tell us about Mark's running. Yep. We didn't know about Mark was running. So now we're in this weird position. Is Andrew going to put me on a flyer like John Smith supporting Andrew? Well, I did support him when he was running for that other seat. So I'll say, yeah, I thought he was running for, you know. I've known Mark, about 4 years now, approximately? Mark's pretty base, what John said over here earlier. He's pretty base. He is. He's a conservative. So if you become a delegate and you're passionate about this subject, his race is something that you're going to want to be a part of. I think that was it, man.
Judge Boonstra, number 4, SupremeCourt.com. I forgot to say that.
What is it?
Judge Boonstra, number 4, SupremeCourt.com.
Also, I saw Danny leaving, I think, with Lance. Did he, Josh?
Who?
Did Danny go outside with Lance?
He's right there.
Oh, you guys better catch him, too.
I was just going to put him in a headlock.
Thank you guys for coming on out.
Signs out here. Please take them.
Yeah, grab an Adam Stockford sign. Grab a America First sign.
CJ had
Oh, yeah,
something
CJ.
up to me about LLCs. CJ, you want to say something
Come on
about it? We've got a lot of people that have these small LLCs. This is important.